Okay, hi Emma.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, cool. So, not to rush into it, we're just going to take our time. We're going to go through APIs. Hopefully, if we understand APIs and fetch, it'll still be a very good day. So, I set up my other screen
Mm,
during the break so that we could take our time and go through it. So, okay. So, let me just share my screen. Okay. So, I'll share my screen and I'll just quickly. So, I mean, no problem. We're just going to go over everything we're talking about in terms of APIs again. Okay. So, I mean, I don't know if you would want to code along or just listen, but I mean, we'll just start we'll just talk about API. So, uh, I hope you can see my screen.
VS Code, yeah.
Okay, great. So I'll just create a new, uh, touch. Let's create touch name.js. And this with, okay, great. So now let's jump into it. So like we're saying that APIs are just interfaces for doing things. So the way I usually like to think about it is an API is just a simple interface for complex stacks. Now think about when you go to a restaurant, think of a restaurant menu. You see a restaurant menu where you have like all the things that the restaurant probably has to offer. Now, by default, what the restaurant menu is just an interface for selecting. Then, when you select, the chef is probably in the kitchen and they are going to do the work and they are going to bring you the food and everything. So it's not the menu which is going to do the work. The menu is just an interface which allows you to sort of communicate with the chef that this and this is what I want. So that is what an API is. An API is just a simple interface for a complex action. So cooking in the kitchen and trying to make the best meal is the complex action. But the menu is the API. It allows you to just sort of communicate with. So that's how you want to think of an API. So an API lets one thing communicate with another thing without having to know how the things are being implemented. So when you go to the restaurant and you pick the meal on the menu, you don't know how the meal is going to be prepared. You don't know how the chef is going to quickly fix it for you. All you know is that this is on the menu. So when I select it, I'm supposed to get it. So that is an API. That is how you want to think of an API. An API is just what is allowing you to communicate with another thing without having to know all the things that is going on in the background. So you don't have to know all the things in the background. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So that is an API. Now, what happens is that with an API, we have our application. So let me escalate draw. Uh, So we have our application, we make a request to the API, and the API sends us back a JSON response. So escalate draw. Okay. So think of it like this. I wish I could draw. You can see the whole screen, right? You can see the
Mm-hmm.
okay. So this is our application. This is the API. So what we do is, and maybe let me write it inside. This is our application. This is our app. This is the API. So this is the app, this is the API. So what we do is that we make a request. We make a request to the API. So request. We make the request to the API. And then what happens is that the API sends back a response. And the response the API sends back is what we call the JSON data. So APIs usually send back a JSON data. We'll talk more about JSON data. So the API will send back JSON. So our application makes a request to the API. The API sends back a JSON response, which usually is just data, data, and then we use the data to do something else. So the API is just an interface for a complex action. So we make requests like the way we select what we want on a menu. So we do that by making the request to the API. Then the API listens to our request and it answers our request and it sends back data in JSON. Does that make sense so far?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, good. So now back into the VS Code. Which one? Okay, so back into the VS Code. We said the way we usually make requests to APIs is by using the fetch. So there's a dog CEO API. It usually loads up dog images. So fetch, and I just grabbed the URL for the dog CEO. I don't know why they call it dog CEO, but there's a dog CEO API. So this is the URL. So usually you just need a URL for the API. If it has a key, they'll have a place for you to enter the key, but this one you don't need a key. So by fetching, we are making a request to the dog CEO API. Now we are saying that when we make a request, what will come back is usually JSON data. So what you want to do is you want to sort of handle the JSON data. So when you make the request and the response comes, what's next? What should you do with the response? So usually what we want to do, so what we do in the first or then block is that when we make the response and the data comes, what should we do with the data? And we're saying that usually the data comes in we said the data comes in a JSON format. So it comes in a JSON format. So we want to handle that. Now, the way we handle that is in JavaScript, we can pass JSON data so that it looks nice, so that it's in the form of an object so that we can manipulate it. So usually what we do is, rest is just any variable, but it can be a response. So we're saying that when the response comes back, we want to pass the response in a JSON format. We want to pass it. So we do rest.json. All we are saying in this line is, I don't need a semicolon here. So all we are saying is that when we make the request to the, when we make the request, the result that will come back or the response that comes back, we want to pass it. So, or when we say pass it, we just want to format it in a way that we can actually use it. So we want to pass it as JSON. So pass the response as JSON. So this is just a variable. It could be anything. It could be Thomas. Then we'll say Thomas as JSON. So this is just, response is just representing, is a variable we are using to represent the data we'll get back. So we're saying that we'll get back a response and we want to pass the response as JSON. So we want to pass the response as JSON. And then what we want to, after we've passed it as JSON, what do we want to do with it? So .then, the last .then is what we want to do with the data. For now, maybe let's just console log the data and let's see what data we are getting back. So let's just console log the data. Okay. Please, if you have any questions at any time, please stop me and ask me. So just to go over, we are making a request to the API. So this is the API. We're using the .co API. And we said that when we make a request to an API, what we usually get back is a response. Now we want to pass the response as JSON. Then I want to do something with the response. So in this instance, we'll get back a response. What we want to do is we want to pass the response as JSON. So this is just a JavaScript method that's the response. We should pass it as JSON. Then this is also just representative. So it's just step by step. So the first time we've made a request, what is coming back, we are using response to represent what is coming back, and we'll pass it as JSON. Then data is just representative of the response that we've passed. So it could be anything, but you just want to name it like this so that it's more descriptive of what you are doing. So here's the response and here's the data. So if we save this, let's run this and see what we get. So let me just do a quick one. Doc CEO. And let's link our JavaScript file. What did we call it? Main.js. Main.js. Okay, so that's all we need. So if we open this in our browser, now the reason we are not seeing anything is we didn't put anything there. We are just logging it. So we have to go and check our console. So if we check our console, hopefully we'll have some data in the console. Okay, so we can see that it has returned an object. So let's open the object and see. The object says that message status success. So it means that what we did was successful. So the message is it returned a dog image. Now, maybe if we really want to see, let's add it to our HTML. So let's do image. Let's give it an ID. Let's call it image. And again, same things we learned. So let's come here. How will we grab, if we want to grab it in our JavaScript, what could we use to grab it?
The image, right?
No, we just want to grab this, the image. Yeah, we want to grab it and do something with it in our JavaScript. Do you remember?
Yeah, we can put it in a class and then we can, or we can, oh no, yeah, or wait. Oh no, that's CSS. I was
No,
going to
I
say,
mean, don't worry, don't think too much. Just go on with what they are saying.
oh no, I was going to say, I don't remember the exact term for it, but like let's say if it was in a class or a div, then say like div dot whatever it
Yes.
is, the
Yes.
image.
Yeah, so it's the same thing. So we remember when we spoke about document object model, we said that by default, our browser makes everything a document, so we can come inside and grab stuff. So here we could, we gave it an image, an ID of image, so we could come and do const. Let's just call it image so that we can remember. So document dot, let's get elements by ID. Do you want to jump in the code? Should I send you a live show? You're okay watching?
You send me. Okay.
Okay. Let me see if this works.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so you're in the code now. Okay, so just to reiterate what we're talking about. Hopefully I don't have to go back to this, but it's just that when we have an app, we can make a request to an API. API is just like, think of it as the restaurant menu. When you select what you want, you're making a request to the chef and the chef will bring you back your food. So when we make a request to the API will usually return a response. And the cool thing about API is they're usually handling all the things. So we don't have to worry about all the things that is going on in the background. We don't have to worry about all the things that's going on in the kitchen. can just grab the data that is sent back and we can use it for fun stuff. So in this example, what we are doing is that we are making a request to the doc.co API, and the doc.co API, and maybe let me just, okay, we're just making a request to the doc.co API. And the thing about APIs is usually they tell you like how to make requests to it, like what to do and stuff like that. They have like documentations on it. So in this doc.co API that we are using, and it's not like I like dogs, but this is just like an easy one to demonstrate. Most people have APIs. Like I know like Twitter has an API, so you can make requests to it. You can build your own like Twitter clone. Recently, Elon Musk said you have to pay for it, but aside that, like you could. So you can see that they are saying that we can use this one to make a fetch request. And if we do random, it will just give us a random one. So we can just copy this. We just want a random. So they say that if we make a fetch request, it will generate a picture of a random dog. I mean, I'm sure there's a way we could do for particular breeds. So we are just copying this thing because we just want a random dog. So that's what we just paste here. So we just want a random dog. So by default, we see in their documentation that they said if we make a request, we'll get a JSON data that has two properties. So one is a message. The message has the image, and the status has whether our request was a success or not. So those are the two things. The first one is a message. The message is the JPG. So that's actually the dog image. And then we'll get a status. So we know that when we make a request, the request usually will get two things back in it. So we'll get a message and status. So back into our code, we're making a request to their API. The response we get, we want to pass it as JSON. And when we're ready, I think we know that the data that comes back, the data will have two things. It'll have message and it'll have status. So we could, if we just wanted to check the message, we could do maybe alert. So data is representing everything that comes back from it. And when we're talking about objects, we say we can use the dot syntax to get things. So since we know that one of the things that comes back is message, we could do data dot message. So let's try and alert the message that comes from the data. So if I refresh this and it is successful, so you see it is taking a while. That is what, so we are saying that this page alerts this. So that's the message that comes back. Now we could also just console log it so that we can see it with our eyes. So if we console log it, if we refresh, so by default, these are the messages we got. We got this and this. Now the cool thing about API is not just making requests and like logging it. So what we could now do is, 1 second, someone is messaging. What we could now do is we could probably take the data and do something fun with it, like maybe put it inside of HTML, or like, yeah, that would be like the more fun thing to do rather than just like log it. So let's try and put it inside our HTML. Do you want to attempt putting it inside your HTML? Give it a try. I mean, give it a try. So now we know that this data will return something. One of those things has a message, and the message is the one that has the image URL. You can talk through it. Like, I mean, you don't have to write. We can just pseudocode. If you were to go about it, how would you go about it?
Wait, come again.
Okay, so again, when we read the dog API, it says that when we make a request, when we make a request, the response we get back when we pass it as JSON, one of the things inside of it is message, and that is status. So status will just tell us if it has been successful, but the message will contain a URL to an image. So for example, let me show you something. If I copy this URL and I just had like raw JavaScript, a raw HTML and I put it as my source. What have I done? Okay, I guess I have too many quotation marks. So just if I just had raw HTML and I copied this URL to an image and I refresh my page, you can see that I have a dog image. So I have a dog image. So it means that the link is a link to an image. Now, by making requests to APIs, we can make it dynamic. So every time we make a request, we can get a different picture. So that the picture, right now, we just copied the hard-coded link and we've put it here. That's why we have an image. But then using JavaScript, we can get the response we get from the API and use it to always change the image. I don't know if it makes sense. Except you want me to maybe run it through the first time, then maybe another time. Or you want to think about it.
I don't know how to go about it.
Yeah, that's fine. No pressure.
Function? No.
I mean, you could use a function. True, you could use a function. So the main things is that, first of all, do you see how we are making a request to an API and we are getting some sort of response?
Yeah.
Yes. So we're getting some sort of response. Now we want to do something with the response, because the only reason we want to make requests to APIs is do something with response. So for example, I'm sure they have a way of making like a request to get like specific docs. I mean, if we look at the API, there's probably a way to get specific docs. So breed list. Okay, they have a breed list. Hit at. So breed list. So they're saying that if we wanted to get all the breeds, we could just do all, and we'll get all the breeds they have. We could also do by breed. So, I mean, what that allows us to do is that maybe we could build a search. Then we could let the user type in what breed they are looking for. Then we could use the breed they are looking for to make the request. So that when we get the request, we could display that. Maybe we'll try that on Saturday. But the whole point is that with an API, we can make specific requests and stuff like that. Right now, all we are doing is that we are just getting random images. We are not allowing user to search. For example, if we want a user to search, we could have like a search box. Then whatever the user types there, we could grab it and we could add that to our fetch. So maybe the last thing will be whatever the user type. Then we could just search for that particular image. So maybe if the dog was looking for like a Baobab, we could just fetch images of Baobabs based on what the user is typing. So we could do like fancy stuff by maybe getting the user request and making fetch requests with just what the user is searching for. But I mean, one thing at a time. So right now we're just getting a random image. So we know that when we make a fetch, after we've passed it, we'll get a random image. Now we can take the random image and we can insert it into our HTML. So maybe one way we could obviously do it is we could target this image. So we are grabbing this image the same way we grab a document.getElement by ID. So we are grabbing this image. And when we get the what do you call it? When we get the image, the data, what we can do is we can grab the image, then we can target the style. I guess style. Is it style? No, not style. SRC. Then we could just insert data.image, data.message. The reason I know, sorry, data, not a string, data. The reason I know that we'll insert data.message is that we know that the data we get back, the one that has the picture is the message property. So the data is all that we're getting back, and we use dot to get the particular property. So if we wanted to get the status, we'll do data.status because it's a property. If we want to get the message, we'll do data.message. Does that make sense so far?
Yeah.
Or you have a question?
Yep. I'm back.
Okay, great. Let me see if this works. Okay. Yeah, I mean, before you left, I was asking if you had any questions.
No, no.
Okay, cool. So, I mean, the whole thing, I mean, maybe, first of all, we have an image with an SRC, but we don't have anything there because we want to always use a new one that we get from our API. And we're giving it an ID of image. An ID of image. I hope the things in the HTML at least makes nothing is confusing here.
No.
Okay, so we just have an image with an ID of with an ID of image. Now in our JavaScript, we're just grabbing that image, and we've given because it's an ID, we are doing document.get element by ID, and the ID we give to it is image, so we are grabbing it. Now the cool thing we are doing is that we are making a fetch request to the dog API, and we are getting a random dog image. We're getting a random dog image, and then when we get it, as always, if you are using .then, this is always the same way you do it. First of all, you get the response and you pass the response as JSON. So this is repetitive. So when you fetch, you pass the response as JSON. Then the data that you get, you can do anything with the data. Now, when we console log the data, we saw that when we get this data, one of the things that comes with it is the message, and the message contains like a link to an image, the image of the dog. So all we are doing is that we are grabbing with this image, we've already grabbed it, and now we are dynamically changing the source. So we are saying that we want the source of the image to be the message property that comes with the data.message. The reason we know that is that I mean, we are not console logging it, but the reason we know that is that if this thing will load, the reason we know that is because in our JSON data, the message will always have a link to an image. So we can use that, and it's a JPEG. So we know that it's an image. So we can make that our source. So then every time we want to change it, we can change the source of our image and make it the message property. So every time we refresh our page, we should expect that we get a random dog. And you see, the reason it's taking a while is because it's making a request. And that's why we have to make it synchronous. It's not immediate because we don't have the dog readily offhand. So, I mean, if we wanted 20 dogs, I mean, we could write a code to show 20 dogs on the page. But every time I refresh the page, you'll make a new request and then we'll get a new dog. So I hope it has excited you a little bit about like the possibilities of what you can do with APIs and stuff like that. I mean, this is like the fun part, making requests, building applications which are dynamic, not static pages. I mean, static pages are just cool. Sometimes you don't need a lot. Like you will always want the page to display the same thing all the time. So it's static. But like for most pages, it has to be dynamic and doing random things. So we built out a little applications that, and even if we wanted to make it fun, we could, and we don't want the user to always refresh. We could do something even more cooler. We know how to make request, and we know how to add event listener. So maybe we could add like a button, and we could add maybe a button, and we could add make get dog image. If we save this, we could come here and we could grab the button. So we could do document dot query I guess we didn't give it anything, so query selector button, because that's the one of the ways, if you remember, we could use query selector. And because I didn't give it an ID, so I'm giving it. Then we could add an event listener. So let's say the event listener we want is click, and every time a person clicks it, we want to run a function called get dog image. Now, get dog image, yes. Now, what do you think we have to do next? Sorry, so I hope I'm not giving you pressure. So,
Um,
so remember that what we put here is the function we want to run when this event has happened, right?
yeah. The
Now the only thing we have to do, go on.
pass the response as JSON. Oh
Okay.
no.
So the only thing is currently we've written get dog image, but we don't have any function called dog image. So we
Yeah,
could
yeah.
just cut all of this, create a
Um,
function called dog image, get dog image. Then
mm,
we could just paste everything back in it. So now the difference is that now we are saying that every time the person clicks on our button, we want to make a request. So we are not making the request when we refresh the page. We are making a request when the person clicks on the button. So anytime we click on this, we expect that it will generate a random dog image. Yay. Where did our button disappear to? Yeah, I mean, we need to use CSS. So when we click on it again, we expect that the image will change. When we click on it again,
mm.
we expect that the image will change. So it's just the same ideas. We've just like added a different layer where now we don't want to refresh. We want to click a button and get dog image. Should I go over it again or you want to look at it and try to?
Um, I'll quickly go over the top part again.
Okay. I know it's 11 p.m. too, so don't worry. We're almost done. So does this make sense? The grabbing the image?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So maybe to make this even more cleaner, first of all, we'll just do the same way that we've been doing it. So we want to grab our button. So we could just do document. I'm breaking it down so that it will look cleaner. Dot get query selector. I mean, we could, if we want to keep using IDs, maybe we could come and give it an ID button. I mean, I didn't think it was necessary, but we could come and give it an ID button. So document dot get element by ID. And we're getting the one with element by ID. And we said that we can add event listeners. So event listeners is do something when something happens. So what we want to do is we want to add an event listener to the button that when you click on it, do something. So we will do our button. Then let's add an event listener, add event listener. We can add so many event listeners, but I guess the easy one we want to add is click. So when you click on the button, what do we want to do? When you click on the button, we want to run a function called get dog. So when you click on the button, we want to run a function called dog image. Now the function we want to, and let me cut this out. The function we want to run called dog images, and let me paste this here. Let me just get the URL and I'll just type everything from scratch so that the one way usually when I'm practicing stuff, I think I write it, delete it, keep writing it until like my fingers get used to it. So we said we want to get dog image. Now, the way we want to get dog image is that we've heard of an API that has dogs. Right now, we are not letting the user enter their own dogs. So we just give them random dogs. They don't have a choice. So we want to make a fetch request. We want to make a fetch request to a URL. This is the URL and it's a string. I mean, sometimes if you want to, depending on, I don't know how people are, some people like to be systematic. So they'll maybe make a variable called URL and they'll paste the string here. Then they'll just make a fetch to the URL. It's still the same thing. It just depends on how you like to roll. So I guess I just paste the URL directly here. So we're making a fetch request to this URL. What we want to do is when we make the request, when we get the data, we want to when we get a response, because we said that anytime we make a request to an API, we get a response. So we want to pass our response as JSON. So we take our response dot then. I mean, next week we'll talk, the next time we meet, we'll talk about async await. It's the same way, but it's probably cleaner. People like async await, people like dot then. So we want to say that when we make the request dot then, the response we get, and we are saying this is just a variable. You can call it anything. You can call it Tom. Tom.
Mm.
Then we want to pass the Tom as JSON, but just so that it's not confusing. I mean, I'm calling the response so that it makes sense. So we're saying that dot then, so after we've made the fetch, we'll get a response. And what we want to do is we want to pass the response as JSON. So we'll pass the response as JSON, and it's a function. It's a function. So we're calling the JSON function. That's why we have 2 parentheses at the end. Then after we've passed it, what we want to do is that, so another dot, then we want to get the data and want to do something with the data. Now, sometimes you won't know what data is coming from it. So there are ways that you can check what data is coming from it so that you know that like this is the property I need and stuff like that. This one, we console logged it. So we know that it is the message one that has the image URL. I mean, later on, I'll show you how you can check for what responses the API is sending. So we said that the data has a property called message, and message has an image URL. So what we want to do is that we are already grabbing the image, and the image, like we said, usually if we want to add a picture, we use the source. The source is the way we link things. So what we want to do is that we want to grab the image, and for the image, we want to grab a source. And the source, we want to set the source to the message property that comes with the data, because we know that the message property is a link to an image. So if we save this and to run over it again, then we'll test it out. If we save this, we're just grabbing our HTML elements, a button and an image. And we're saying that when we click on the button, we want to run a function called getDogImage. And what our getDogImage is doing is that it makes a fetch request to the dog API. It passes the response as JSON. Then the data that we get back, there's a message data. So we want to grab our image, the image in our HTML. We want to grab the source and want to set the source to the message. The message, I guess they should have named the picture or something, would have been easier. But then it's their API. We can't tell them what to do. So their API has a message, and the message is a link to a dog image. So if we save this and we come here and we refresh, we have our button. So by default, when we click on our button, we've coded it out that it should make a request. So if I click on my button, it's making a request. It has made a request to get a dog image. So whenever I click on the dog, when I click on this button, I'll make a request. So it'll keep making requests, making requests, making requests. That's it. So I mean, you could build out like a whole application with it. You could add your CSS. You could build out an application that has people search for dogs and they get images of dogs. I guess some people looking at images of dogs will make them feel better, stuff like that. So yes, Amma, how are you feeling?
I mean, it's exciting, but yeah, it's new stuff. So I have to, try to like process it more.
Yeah. And I mean, so not to get confused, hopefully you'll get a time to practice these things because we've already gone over. I mean, like we said, the main things you need to know in JavaScript are like how to declare variables, how to do
Yeah.
conditionals, how to do loops and stuff like that, and how to write functions, because most of your programs will just involve these things, maybe with little added complexity, but then your foundations will always be like functions, things like that. So that's all. So I mean, if you take out this thing, if you take out the fetch, and I guess actually, if you take out the fetch, which is the new stuff, most of these things we are hopefully, it's not the first time we are seeing it. It's hopefully the same thing. The one thing we've added to it is making requests, and that is something that takes a little getting used to. I mean, that's fair. So yeah, I mean, any questions before we run away? And I don't know, would you, okay, I'll zip this and send it to you so you can play around with it. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, if you want to add CSS, if you want to mm, get multiple images, you can just play around with it. And I recommend like delete it, try and write it again, delete it, try and write it again until like you get familiar with what it's doing. Maybe you can even, right now we just made a button, maybe you're fancy, you like something else. You don't want people to click on, you want people to maybe when they touch something, like you can add different event listeners, just play around with it. I know having time is a privilege, and we don't always have the privilege of time, so it's fair as much time as you can to play around with it.
Yeah, I'll try my best before Tuesday because yeah, well, I'm defending if the Saturday works out.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'll
Yeah,
let
but I
you know.
mean, hopefully we'll run over this again. So it's not like we are done. We'll just move on to something. Or we'll run over it again. But hopefully, it got you excited about possibilities of things you can do. Like we just build an application that when we click on, we can get stock images. Imagine what things we can also do. So yeah, hopefully,
Yeah,
just gets you a little excited. Then we'll keep adding on. So like we are building like big applications.
yeah.
Okay. So any questions? I'll stop sharing now since we're done. Any questions?
Mm, no, so far this is clear.